Hey, this is Sean Manning of The Exiles, and I'm on Talking About Rock.
All right, today's guest originally moved to Los Angeles, California to accompany a close friend and newly minted Dio Axeman, Rowan Robertson. Attending to study jazz, things changed when he was introduced to Paul Rafferty by a local music journalist, John Sutherland. Discovering their mutual love for British blues rock, the duo quickly formed a strong writing partnership and recruited Paul Andrew Stanley. After briefly utilizing the services of former White Lion drummer Greg D'Angelo, the lineup was completed with the addition of Terry Marskell. The Exiles were formed and became a mainstay of the Southern California music scene in the early 90s. Now they've joined forces with French label Bad Reputation Records for the reworked and expanded 30th anniversary reissue of their album, Turning Time Out Now. Joining us now, let's welcome Sean Manning.
Hey, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. So the Exiles Turning Time was first released kind of in a limited capacity in 96. Now it's been reworked here for what we're seeing with 10 original songs and 5 previously unheard bonus tracks here too.
Yeah. It's actually completely different to the original. The original, when it was released, wasn't completely mastered. It was more like a bunch of demos. And had only so many tracks on them. So the whole thing has been remastered, re-recorded with additional tracks, additional musicians, additional parts and orchestration, and remastered with 5 completely lost songs as well. So it's, for all intents and purposes, it's a new release.
And so some of the stuff I guess you got included on here is Soul Woman, Ain't No Fool, and Soul Has No Home is also included on here. Yeah.
The new tracks were originally demos, which I found on a master tape that was sent to me. And I completely forgotten about them. And we threw them on the 2-inch here at Empire Studios in Dallas, where I live now. And I completely forgotten about them. And 2 of the 5 were, I could not believe that they weren't on the original. Soul Woman, 1 specifically. Ain't No Fool is very Street Fighting Man, Rolling Stones type of vibe. So it was like a Christmas gift that you didn't realize that you had at the end of the day on Christmas Day. It was kind of like that when I put the tape on the 2-inch.
Yeah, and it looks like you also brought in veteran keyboardist Jeff Jacob on here, whose credits include Foreigner and Billy Joel he's played with also.
Yeah, Jeff had played with me before. We'd done some gigs here in Dallas, doing some Stone stuff before. He's an amazing musician, good friend, and he completely nailed it. He came in, put some orchestration, some strings, some Hammond, some Mellotron on the tracks for me, which really fills them out. And he was able to take, the typical guitarist basically saying, I need this kind of vibe here that was on this Rod Stewart album. Can you do that? And bam, he would just nail it straight off. So, I was very grateful to have him involved in the project. He did an awesome job.
Yep, sounds like you got the perfect fit for that. So let's talk a little bit about your history as well, some of the things you've done over your career. So starting out a little bit back in the 70s, you played with Kevin Dubrow under the name Little Women, a band, I guess, that they was like an offshoot before Quiet Riot, or an earlier band he put back together?
Actually, Little Women was the original name for Quiet Riot. I played with Kevin in the late 80s. Okay, in the late 80s, after they had disbanded, and actually Kevin was doing his thing. Paul Shortino had done the album with Quiet Riot. Forget the name of it. I'd done some sessions with Paul Shortino as well at the time, and Kevin was looking for a new guitarist, and this would have been about 89. And got together with him. Wasn't really too familiar with the band, being from England, because they weren't really big in England. My only exposure to them was being a Slade, cover band, for want of a better term. I didn't realize how big they were, obviously, till I was over here. And I got together with Kevin, and because I wasn't a fan per se, I was a musician. I came over to study jazz. I didn't really have much time for any of his Kevin Dubrow-isms or his shenanigans. So I was
he was very outrageous in the day, right?
He was, and I was
kind of got him in some trouble at times.
Yeah, and I was just like, no, dude, you're flat here. You need to be better, type of thing. And I think, honestly, that was what he respected about me, because I was a musician, and he wanted an English guitar player as well. John Sykes had actually told him, you need to get an English guitar player. And so we got together and we started writing songs. He sat me down and he said, look, I think at the time he and Frankie were going backwards and forwards with the legal rights to the name, and he said, I want to reform the band. I want you to be the guitar player. So we're going to write some songs for it. So we did, and we started working those songs together. We went out under the name of Little Women, which was a name that Randy had come up with for Quiet Riot originally, until Kevin heard Rick Parfitt from Status Quo say Quite Right. And his accent, he thought it sounded like Quiet Riot. That's how they actually came up with the name. So we went out under that and did shows in New York and on the West Coast and in Arizona under the name and the banner of Little Women. And then I could, to be frank, I hung with it only for about a year, and it wasn't musically for me. It wasn't enough for me. So I said, look, we kind of went our separate ways. But Kevin was very gracious. He used the songs that we wrote together on the very next Quiet Riot album, which is called Terrified. It was released a couple of years later. And I actually went down and sang backups on it with him, and then jammed with him and the guys when they came to Florida, which was cool. Bobby Rondinelli was playing drums with them at the time. When I jammed with them, it was before they recorded the album. Because I believe Bobby played. I just learned today that Bobby played drums on the album, even though that it was Frankie's picture on there. And then obviously they went on, and I think it was a good thing for him because he loved Frankie. They were like brothers. He really missed him when he wasn't working with him. But they were, at that time, they were going through this stuff apparently, and that wasn't any of my business. But I met Frankie a number of times. He was really, really sweet, and yeah. So I had a great time. I will say, when I was working with Kevin, I didn't really appreciate the things that we were doing together because I wasn't enamored by him in any way. And the only reason really why I worked with him, because I wasn't a big fan of the music, was because Ronnie Dio, he said he's got pipes, he can sing. And Ronnie was one of my heroes, obviously. And I'm like, well, if Ronnie says he can sing, then I'll work with him. And plus, he'd worked with Randy. But I had spoken to him for a number of years, and then I was going down to one of my offices in Austin, and I had this overwhelming urge to call him. And I connected with him on that call, brother, like I had never connected with him before. And I told him I loved him, and I told him I was grateful for the time that we spent together. And we had this incredible connection on that phone in a way that we didn't have when we were working together for an entire year and a half. And the next week, he was dead. So I got a chance to close that chapter with him, which I was really grateful for.
That's outstanding. Yeah, a lot of people don't get that chance, right, to kind of mend that fence, or like you said, put an end to that on good terms, definitely before someone passes. Yeah. So moving along here, you left that and you joined Hurricane, actually, with bassist Larry Antonio and vocalist Kelly Hansen on there, I believe, as well, and released Liquid Fury.
Yeah, we were actually. When I joined the Hurricane originally, it was a few years before that, and it was Jay and Kelly and Tony Cavazzo and myself writing together. And then Jay started to work with Unruly Child, and Kelly and I started to work with Greg D'Angelo and James Lomenzo who just parted from White Lion. So the original four of us was Greg and James and myself and Kelly. And then Kelly went to, he was actually looking to work with CC DeVille, wanted him to be a singer for his band at the time. And it was a charity gig that we did in Hollywood. There was Greg, James, myself, and Ray Gillan singing some Deep Purple. And that was when, and Ray actually said to me, you need to get an English blues singer, which kind of made a ton of sense. And that's when John put me together with Paul Rafferty, who was everything that I was looking for in a singer. And that's how it all started. And then the songs that I'd written with Jay and Kelly, a few years later, they wanted to re-release those songs. I got together with them and we recorded them. I've always been friends with Jay and Kelly I spoke to Jay a couple of days ago. They're awesome guys. And obviously Kelly's an incredible singer. So, grateful for that experience as well.
Yeah. And as we know, Kelly went on to get into Foreigner and do a lot of great stuff with them as well.
Mm.
Yeah. And so what I was reading also, the Exile, the band split up in the mid 90s, but a collection of demos, in part co-produced by Pat Benatar guitarist Neil Dubrow, surfaced in 96 also.
Yeah. So what happened was at the end of all of that, John Sutherland put together, he was a huge fan of Free and Bad Company, obviously, and Zeppelin. And because it's a very English sounding style of music, he was very supportive of what we were doing. So he put together a collection of the songs that were kind of demos at the time. There's probably 1,000 of them pressed up. There was no company, there was no label, there was no promotion, and there was also grunge, which had just really hit like a freight train.
Right.
And so it was, I knew the timing of it was not good, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. But then I got a call about a year ago from a friend of mine, Chris, over in Switzerland, who said these songs are too good not to be heard. And there's a company that wants to put them out. And I was like, awesome, let me know what happens type of thing. So I got the opportunity to go into the studio and actually make the album that I wanted to make 30 years ago, with all of the orchestration, with new guitar tracks added. I put backing vocals on everything, re-recorded a number of different guitar tracks. Obviously, Jeff came down. He put on keyboards and orchestration and strings on certain songs, and we had it remastered. And I was saying to a chap earlier on today, I didn't used to listen to my work at all, but I can listen to this album and hear things now. And I'm really pleased with having the opportunity to go in and actually make the album that I wanted to make.
So having this opportunity is definitely, the reworked and expanded version of this has definitely been, great for you. It sounds like you kind of really were able to master it and do what you had originally wanted to do with this work.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, originally what I wanted to do, and we were so fortunate, we had some incredible musicians. I mean, we had Frank and Myron from Pat Benatar's band. Neil was producing. And so that, there was a great deal of experience that they had, that they helped us with, Neil specifically. And then obviously Greg, because Greg, the first single, Rainmaker, was released last week, and Greg plays drums on that song. Greg D'Angelo plays drums on that song. And I was listening, when I was in the studio listening to it back, remixing it, I was just blown away. And I said to him, I texted him and I said, it sounds like a machine gun at the end. His drum fills at the end are so tight and so hard. And that's probably one of the best performances I'd ever heard him play. He was a big Zeppelin fan, obviously, so he's very John Bonham influenced. And we for a short period of time, we had a lot of fun together. We have original band pictures with Greg as the drummer. So it was a great experience.
Excellent. So what's in the pipeline now? What are the next steps and plans going forward?
Well, I'm releasing videos for 5 or 6 of the tracks over the course of the next few months, because the music needs to get out there. If anybody is a fan of Zeppelin or Bad Company or the Stones or old school classic rock and roll, there's very little out there now that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are. I mean, I've heard of Greta Van Fleet, but that's about it. In that genre, there's authentic, and there's no AI involved. Every single instrument is played. The songs are all have been written from the heart and out of nowhere. And the strategy of the album, how it ended up, you've got everything on there from Free, Bad Company, if you like the Black Crowes, you'll love it. If you like Bad Company, you should love it, and Zeppelin too, and early Rod Stewart. Paul was a big fan of early Rod Stewart, and you can hear it in the rasp in his voice. Just an incredible singer. So the goal is just to get the music out there, because there's, I'm a music fan. I'm a musician. I've always been a music fan of quality. It's very hard for me to listen to stuff now because so much of it is so perfect. I mean, technically it's incredible, but I'll see guitarists, online that incredible. But I want to hear somebody just bend a note like Gary Moore used to do, or Paul Kossoff used to do, or David Gilmour used to do. So it's old school. That's where I come from. It's the imperfections that make it perfect. If you listen to the Rain Song by Zeppelin, and you listen, there's a number of mistakes in there musically where Robert doesn't quite get to the note, but that's what makes it. That's what gives it the personality. And so this album is very much in that genre and in that vein in terms of the authenticity. I made the album that I wanted to make for me, and if anybody else likes it, then that's awesome.
Yeah. I think you definitely hit it on there. Rock and roll has never been about perfection. It's always been about feeling, making that musical connection with your fans. And you see so many of these classic artists up there, back in the day when they were playing from the heart, and you could feel that and you could see that. Yeah. And that's definitely something that's lacking nowadays. Maybe musically it sounds perfect, but we need that emotional feeling from the artist to see that music affect them, to affect the audience, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. I went a couple of years ago. I went to see the Cult, and if you listen to Rainmaker, our song, you can hear the Sonic Temple influences. I was listening to the Sonic Temple and Bob Rock's production with Billy using a 12-string and a heavy Les Paul underneath. I went out here in Dallas. I live in Dallas. I went to see the Cult, and I was just shaking my head because the band is right there, literally 20 feet from you, and you're looking at the performance through a bloody iPhone, through a 2-inch screen, right, completely missing it, filtering the entire experience, and the band is right there. And I think a lot of that is, obviously your technology changes things, but I think a lot of that is missed. When I used to go, to see bands, the entire thing was an experience.
Yeah. Now it's like recording the experience is the experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And artists are starting to say, we don't want that happening at shows. We want people to come here and experience what we're doing, not shoot the video. And a lot of artists are starting to say, yeah, you can't do that, can't have that.
And I can understand why. I mean, if you're playing, you're given a piece of yourself, and everybody's just looking at a damn cell phone. It's like they're not going to get it. And I know you want a really good experience sonically, right? Because I truly believe that some of these bands, if they were all playing live now, it wouldn't be as good as it sounds. Let's just leave it there.
Right.
And you do want the best experience, but I tell you, when I was a kid and I went and saw Michael Schenker, and I went and saw UFO, and I went and saw Iron Maiden, and I saw Ozzy playing with Jake, in the 3,000 seat theater, and I saw Motorhead for the first time, and you there's something that you get from that is real and is authentic. Plus, back then too, somebody like Ronnie Dio, who has so much talent, you had to have incredible talent. I think there's a lot of talent, probably a lot of talent around now, and people are seeing more of it because of technology. But in terms of a band, the band isn't about individual talent. For me, it's about the four people getting together and just creating something bigger than themselves, which is what the Zeppelins of the world did and the Beatles of the world did and stuff, So, I want to hear, I think all guitarists should be required, to play a solo with only 3 notes and see what they can do with those 3 notes.
And get that feeling across that.
And bend that string and let me feel it in my gut. Like Gary Moore could say more in 1 note, bend in 1 note, and he would take your head off, than 1,000 notes, and it would move you. You couldn't help but be moved. So I'm a big, I'm older. It's all old school for me, brother.
Yeah. I totally agree. I got to see a lot of that back in the day as well, you know. Yeah, obviously a lot of bands coming up with Ozzy. He had a lot of people open for him, you know, through the ages. Obviously Metallica was one of the big ones that came along the way. But yeah, so much music was so much different back then. It was a shared experience.
It was
back then. You went with your friends, you hung out. It was a shared experience. That's what you wanted, you know, back then. That's what it was all about.
And back then too, I was talking to a guy earlier today. It's like, you know, when you got an album, you opened the album and you saw the liner notes and you saw all the pictures that were on the sleeve or on the gatefold. Like the first album I got was Rainbow Rising. And that whole experience was so much larger than life. They were, you know, it was something, there was a big separation, you know, and I think what happened, and I experienced it when it happened, when grunge came in, because it had gotten too ridiculous with the hair metal. And I could see that.
Right. Some people say it was time for that. Some people say it was like time to wipe that clean.
It was, because it was getting too ridiculous, and it was America's equivalent to punk rock. It needed to happen at the time because it was getting so overblown and corporate, you know. Bands were being put together with some phenomenal musicians, but they were being put together as bands, and they didn't know each other, but they were phenomenal musicians getting together, you know, and making music. And that's just where it went, you know, with technology. So
yeah, so great to see you're bringing some of that back, some of the style and music that we love. So the expanded 30th anniversary reissue of the Exiles, Turning Time, is out now. Sean Manning, thank you so much for joining us today, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, brother. God bless.
All right, and you folks out there, we hope you're doing your part by keeping the torch alive and supporting live music wherever you are. Sean, again, thank you.